to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, McMeow. Please subscribe to me on patreon.com/McMeow. You can also find the Conservative Continuum on Rumble and Facebook. We have a ballot cat show today with Wendy Dial and Ryan Hill of the Oklahoma Liberty and Integrity Group. They will be talking to us about the 2022 primary results, election integrity updates, and much more. So grab your kitty treats and your milk, and let's get ready to engage. Well, it's time for the caterwaul, so let's get to it. The election stakes are high this year. Republicans will need to prevent the leftist agenda from being entrenched and changing Oklahoma. We have a few examples throughout the show today of what the left would bring. State Superintendent of Public Instruction Ryan Walters, not Jenna Nelson. She will continue the Joy Hoffmeister agenda, who allowed the Marxist diverse equity and inclusion agenda in our schools. She would stand for masking up your children, mandating experimental vaccines, and shutting down schools, all in the name of COVID or the next flu virus. District Attorney Kevin Calvi, not Vicky Behana. She is the defense attorney for Chris Mays, who is now rearrested. If you didn't watch the Calvi-Behana debate, you should. Kevin Calvi accused Behana of submitting fake emails to get her client Chris Mays off the hook. Turns out, Calvi was right, and if Behana is willing to lie to get her client off the hook, what else would she do in the courtroom? Governor Kevin Stitt, not Joy Hoffmeister. She was superintendent of public instruction. Have you seen the education scores? Our children's fourth grade reading has decreased 13 points from 2015 to 2022. 8th grade lost 12 points. 4th grade math lost 11 points. 8th grade math lost 11 points. She went to communist China to learn how to develop a teacher training system and how to use technology to track students through life, evaluate teachers according to the Chinese communist ideology. She wants sanctuary cities. She was in favor of shutting down schools if there were 25 out of 100,000 positive COVID cases in the state, and the massive amounts of scandals surrounding her arrest and ethics violation. It's almost too much. Vote Oklahoma on November 8th. Vote Republican. Don't let them California our Oklahoma. At the end, you will be introduced to Wendy Dial and Ryan Hill from Oklahoma Liberty and Integrity, so stay tuned. Welcome to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. Today I have with me two wonderful guests who are back in the house, Wendy Dial and Ryan Hill, and they are with Oklahoma Liberty and Integrity. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsors, Oklahoma Conservative Political Action Committee, OTUmedia, Miriam Daly for Senate, Charles DeFuria, and Carolyn Montgomery. Thank you guys. Go to patreon.com/MickMeow. Become a sponsor today. Welcome.
Hello.
It's been a little bit, right? July?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Welcome back. Okay, I want to get down to some brass tacks here, but first, if our viewers haven't seen our interview from July, I want you guys to just kind of introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Oklahoma Liberty and Integrity. Tell us a little bit about your goals, your missions, and what you guys are doing for election integrity and reform.
So I'm Wendy Montgomery Dial, and I started with Oklahoma Liberty and Integrity Group, and Ryan and I were looking into the 2020 election separately, then found each other online together, found out that we're actually distant cousins, so that was fun.
Believe it or not.
Believe it or not, we're related.
You're like twins.
Yes, kind of. Yeah, but started working together on the 2020 elections. Ryan started before I did, but I started finding some things that were concerning regarding the 2020 election right away and started research. Ryan had been researching Oklahoma, so then we kind of got together and we continue to research Oklahoma elections. So every single election we work at the data for and then present it to the public.
I think that's a pretty good summary. Just to add anything to that, I started off looking at registration trends after 2020 because I started hearing what was going on in other states, and I thought, I wonder, we think our elections are perfect here, but are they really? And I've worked in IT, and I do a lot of, analyzing the numbers and looking for trends and anomalies, and so I thought, okay, let me look into this, and I started finding some disturbing things, and then as we started to collaborate, looking at it from different angles and being able to pull resources, and we've had a lot of help too, just from other citizens and residents here in Oklahoma and elsewhere that are adding to the whole picture for us. So there's definitely we're going to keep going for that. Our mission really is we want to see a restoration of election integrity first, but we also think there's kind of an ongoing education that needs to be done because we've forgotten our history, just like we discovered our families have been running around in the same states and since the revolution and all of that.
Wow.
Well, I didn't know any of this before I started. I started looking into that after we were doing some of the election work, and you realize our country has such a rich history, and this only probably happened to us. I'm talking about all of the corruption that's going on because we didn't learn it or we didn't take it to heart. So I think that's pretty central to both of our mission in this too.
I agree.
Wonderful. I'm glad that you guys shared that. It's wonderful for me to hear that there are others involved and that there's kind of like a swelling coming of grassroots people coming together to look at election reform, election integrity. I agree. We're the reddest state, but are we really? Are we really?
What does that mean?
Right. Exactly.
And part of our goal is to get people as individuals to be educated about the issues so that they are engaged as well on a personal level, just on their own. And if everybody's vigilant and knows what to do regarding elections and election integrity and what to look for and what to watch for and be aware of the process, then it should be secure moving into the future.
Amen. Okay, let's kind of talk a little bit about Captain Seth Keshel.
Captain K.
Captain K.
Nice.
So he was at the Liberty Church in Edmond October 5th. And he spoke about his analysis, gave some updated information on the 2020 election here in Oklahoma. And he referred to it as election corruption and spoke mainly about the Oklahoma and Tulsa counties. He looked into registration trends and then he compared that to the total accrued votes. Can you briefly give us an idea or an overview of what he talked about and what he discovered in the analysis of our 2020 election in Oklahoma?
Sure. You want me to start off on
Yes.
that one and talking about the registration because that's similar to where I started, although he's gone so much farther in depth on this in every state basically, and even precinct level in some cases, county by county. Looking at the difference between say 2016 and 2020, how did registration change by party? And we see in state after state, and true here in Oklahoma too, we had a lot of new Republican registrations. We lost Democrat registered voters, so those went down while Republicans went up. Yet somehow, even though the trend had always followed generally the direction of the registrations in 2020, even though all 77 counties went red, they still had a big uptick in Democrat voters for Biden and then the whole slate. But I've looked all the way down the ticket in that he kind of focuses mainly on the top of the line because that's really where we saw the fraud and the corruption across the whole country. And so, but to know that even here in Oklahoma, we have an issue going on with that. He goes back, I think we're looking at like 2004, 2008, 12, 16, and 20, and he shows the uptick or the downfall party by the two parties, and what the margin was, and he gives a lot of context too. I really recommend the video. I believe Liberty Church has the full hour-long
Yes.
presentation he's done. That he goes into why this is so significant better than I could since it was his work.
Yes. It is an excellent video, and if you get a chance to go to it, it is on the website at Fairview Baptist Church.
Okay, good.
Yes, and
So-
I saw it the other day, and I was floored again. Even though I saw it in person, I was floored
Wow.
again by just the difference and the way that he brought that out. That we could have more Republicans register, but yet the Democrat vote goes up, which seems strange.
It does, doesn't it?
Happened
Yeah.
in Pennsylvania too, and that's been one of the hot points of this whole fight. Is they had the same. I remember I have a graphic saved on my computer from before the election showing, boy, look how many more Republicans have registered. And we all expected for that to show up in the ballots, and it didn't. So it's
Mm,
not that we've uncovered yet, right? Since
yeah.
we're not getting to look into a lot of this because it's behind a curtain.
Yes. That kind of brings up a point, and I'm moving off topic here for just a second. We'll bring it back. But speaking of not being able to look at that, the cast vote records, we've had kind of a big problem getting that. Do you think that's tied into this? I mean, not being able to look, do you think that's an intentional censorship? I know
Hmm.
we're not accusing anybody, but do you think that's playing in there?
Well, they are using a law that was passed in 2021. There was a change to Title 26 where they could take information regarding to the voting machines in Oklahoma and basically decide whether or not they were going to release that to the public, make it publicly available or not. So what they've done is given themselves leeway to take any information regarding the machines and not release it to the public, citing national security concerns.
Wow. Okay, the kitty is crying, which tells us he's needy. He's so needy. He needs some treats. We're going
Poor
to take
kitty.
a break. I know. He's so abused. We're going to be back in just a minute. You don't go away. Come right back.
My city get crazy like Babylon. I can't be the go.
Welcome back to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. We are here with Oklahoma Liberty and Integrity. We are here with Ryan Hill and Wendy Dial, and we are talking about what was going on from the 2020. They were here in July. We're kind of getting a little update, but we're going to talk now about you and I. When I point the finger, I may be pointing a finger at you, but three are pointing back at me. So what do we need to do? In Captain K's, I kind of like that. In Seth Keshel's presentation, he spoke of 10 points of action. Can you discuss those with me, things that you and I can do?
Sure, a little bit. He discussed his points to election integrity are on his presentation that is on the Fairview Baptist Church website. But he mentions getting rid of machines, going back to paper ballots, hand counting ballots, holiday, an election day holiday.
I like that.
Yes, absentee ballot only for military or if you are seriously infirmed and at home and can't get out. Also, he mentions basically a lot of common sense issues that people should know. Get involved, become a poll worker. That would be great. Go down and watch your precinct. He mentions smaller precincts, more precincts, and a few other points. But point number one, clean out the voter rolls. The voter rolls in Oklahoma we found to be pretty much a disaster. There's too many questions regarding how they're cleaned out, if they're cleaned out, why we still have so many dead voters on the rolls, why we have so many registrations in particular buildings that don't seem to match the size of the building. If you have 9 or 10 registered voters in a home that's about 2,000 square feet, do we have that many adults that are living in that home? Why did we see approximately 65,000 voter registrations returned as undeliverable upon redistricting? Okay, so we had that go on, which matches a couple of other numbers that approach 65,000. One of them is in Captain Keshel's presentation. So he believes Oklahoma has around 67 excess votes for Joe Biden from 2020 based off of his analysis of the registration data and numbers. And we know that we have 65,000 absentee ballots that are not accounted for from 2020. And then we have the 65,000 registrations that were returned as undeliverable to the state election board. So these numbers are, they line up. We need to know what they mean because we don't know what they mean.
And I think that's 65,000, just speaking hypothetically, is more than enough to change an election outcome in our state.
Yes.
If not the top, it doesn't matter about the top of the ticket. It's the down ballot races that are concerning. Your local races, your school boards, your mayors, your city councilmen, your local DAs, your county commissioners. These races are really important. So, we need to know what's going on with the down ballot races.
Absolutely. That is very perplexing, those numbers, and considering that I think it was in the 2022 primaries, we have 4 million in our population and only 660,000 that voted. So if your voting is only 660,000, give or take, 65,000 is certainly going to sway an election. Yeah, and even less, I would imagine, for, as we've talked about before, in July, even less for school boards or city council or
some of those are decided by a dozen votes, so it doesn't take much. You don't necessarily have to have a Detroit-sized operation going on for there to be, some elections that we have trouble trusting.
Yeah. Oh wow. Well, that is excellent information. And one of the things that I thought that was wonderful when he pointed out was instituting the new reporting requirements to foster transparency. I loved that. And the implementing prison sentences for those that commit election related fraud, which I think is extremely important. And, we're not talking about, locking people down for, 20 years, but if you're ballot harvesting, we're not going to send the FBI to your home, but, you can't be stuffing ballots in ballot boxes or going to nursing homes and saying, hey, here, let me help you, and filling that out. That's how we lose elections.
Right. We need the investigations, and then we need the prosecution, and the laws to back it. So, like you're saying, that there's a punishment for committing fraud.
Yeah, there's a little bit of sting there, so it deters you. I want to move on to the primary election that was held in June of 2022. So that was of interest to a lot of us Oklahomans because of the fact that we had so many grassroots candidates. I mean, the ballot was full of them. And on the show back in July, you talked about concerns that were regarding the changing trends that you saw in absentee ballots. You stated that typically one candidate, the Democrat, was getting almost twice as many absentee votes as the other. Usually that happened in general elections because Democrats mainly vote by mail, early mail-in voting, and Republicans vote the day of the election in person, mainly. And now you're seeing this in nonpartisan intra-party races. And you mentioned that could, you could almost predict, that there was going to be a certain amount of absentee ballots now compared to, votes that were cast on the day of the election, that you used to see 2 to 3%. And now, over the last 2 to 3 general election cycles, you've seen 11 to 12% of absentee ballots come through. And you also mentioned that there was this pattern, a smooth curve when you're graphing the election data, and that was an irregularity based on the large law of numbers, or the law of large numbers. Typically, you see some scatter or randomized numbers. So correct me if I'm wrong about that. Is that right? Kind of summed it up?
Generally, I think
Generally
so.
speaking, yes.
I would say at the beginning, when you talked about the mail-in rates, and feel free to elaborate on this, but 2016 and prior, in Oklahoma at least, Republicans were outvoting Democrats by mail. So that's another new thing that has come since these last few years.
Wow. Okay, well, we are going to jump back into that at the end of the break, but Kitty again needs his treat, so we're going to go and take care of him. Don't go away.
My city get crazy like Babylon. I can't be the go.
Welcome back to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. Please go to patreon.com/Mick Meow and become a sponsor. That would mean so much to us because that would allow us to bring you wonderful information that both you and I need to know in order to be on the ground and informed of what's going on, not only with elections, but other things as well. Thank you to our sponsors, Miriam Daly, OTUmedia, Oklahoma Conservative Political Action Committee, Charles DeFuria, and Carolyn Montgomery. Thank you all so much. So when we dropped off, we were talking about these changing trends in absentee ballots. We were talking about the primary election of 2022 and the irregularities you're seeing as you're graphing out this election data. So, can you tell us what patterns there were, if there were patterns that you saw present in the primary election, and walk us through a little bit of your analysis of these races and what was concerning?
I'll start off. I'm looking at the pie charts that are on our screen here, and this is just one race, so it's just one example. But there are others, and some of those are on our website too. The
What is your website?
Which is oaklig.org or oklig.org.
Perfect.
Thanks for reminding me to say that.
Yeah, no problem. I want everybody to get this information.
Yes,
it's important.
please, and it's all all the resources there are for you to use, share. Show people who have questions about this, and we continue to add to it. So briefly, and then I'll let Wendy take the image on the right. But on the left, you see the total vote in the big chart at the top, where Gentner Drummond just barely beat out John O'Connor, and there are only two candidates, so there's no runoff. It's whoever won this race won. And it's, I think, 50.9 to 49.1%. But then if you drill into it a little bit and look at how did the vote go on election day, well, it's about the same, about 50.2 to 49.9 or 8, I think. And that's even closer than the total outcome. But over on the mail-in side, and I left out the early voting, I just got the mail-ins for this one, it's exactly 60.0% to 40.0%. And I thought that was odd. Well, I also found that same ratio in different races in the same June 28th primary. And this is an example where I'm seeing within the same party, these are both Republicans, not a Democrat and a Republican and a Republican. Somehow we are seeing all the way across the board, the grassroots candidates seem to have a deficit when it came to mail-in voting, and then some of the incumbent or establishment type candidates are seeing what looks like a Democrat level of mail-in support. And I just scratch my head because I thought I've been told that this is a Democrat-Republican thing. So to me, that really stood out to me. There's even, I would even say, on the Democrat Party side, which I didn't look as much at, I saw some of the same things. In fact, I think one of the 60-40s came from the Democrat governor's race.
I did see that. Yes. Wendy, I want you to explain a little bit too, but touch on that 60-40 for us. Why does that 60-40 matter? What does that mean?
Well, I would say just the exactness of it is what stood out to me at first. I don't know if there's anything special about 6-4, 60-40, but the fact that it showed up multiple times when you would expect some randomness out of these elections, that's concerning, and the direction that it seems to slant. So more so than the exact numbers, but it could have been 75-25. If you saw exactly 75.0%, how does that happen when it's supposed to be just people showing up to vote or people deciding on their own? It's not as though there's a party line to call in. Everybody, we're going to turn in our mail-in votes until we have exactly 40%.
Right. Gotcha.
So that's what, to me, that's an anomaly.
So you were going to give us a little bit of information based on the reported results, or is there anything different about the graph versus this information over here?
Okay, so the information to the right there is the absentee ballot plus the early vote totals divided by the total vote for the candidate. And what we see when we run the race totals for the primary are that we get the same percentage numbers showing up over and over again. If you look on the graphic there, 11% exactly shows up many times. 9% shows up. 8.5% shows up. 9.5%. why aren't these numbers more like, why isn't it 11 to 7.7%, or even 5%, or why isn't it 13% to 8% even? Why are the numbers so uniform across the board, race to race? It's that people are not calling each other and saying, I'm going to vote for this person, who are you going to vote for, etc., in these exact percentages, with the early voting and the absentee voting. That's a little too non-random for random elections. So there's questions about that. That should not be the case. You would think in random elections we should see a lot more diversified numbers in the absentee ballot totals.
Right.
But we're not seeing that. We're seeing uniform numbers instead of random numbers.
Huh. That is interesting. I'm glad you pointed that out again, because it's, somebody like me who's been out of statistics, or I don't, look at those numbers. I'm like, but can you tell us a little bit about this trend in the absentee ballots? What does that reveal to us as it relates to election integrity and reform? I know, Kitty. You know what? Let's take a break really quick. He's so needy. We're going to take care of the kitty, and then we're going to come back, and we want to get an answer to what does this mean to us? Don't go away.
My city get crazy like Babylon. I can't be the go.
Welcome back to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. Please don't forget to go to patreon.com/Mick Meow and become a sponsor today. We are here with Wendy Dial and Ryan Hill. They are with Oklahoma Liberty and Integrity, and we are talking about election integrity and reform. So I want to just kind of pick up just real quickly about what is it with the trend in these absentee ballots? What is that revealing to us? How does that relate to us in election integrity?
So we talked about some of the patterns that we saw, and the big thing that I notice in that is that it seems to slant one direction. Just like the other things we've pointed out, it always seems to favor the establishment. Maybe there's some natural reasons for that, but the fact that we see it over and over again, when again, it's like you said, it should be a random election, not two elections in different locations. The patterns aren't going to be the same, yet for some reason they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm sorry, I forget the second part of your question.
Just how that relates to election integrity, or how that is actually impacting.
Yes. So I mean, we see things that make us scratch our heads and say, I can't outright accuse, just because there's some numbers that go a certain way doesn't automatically mean that there's fraud. But it is more than enough grounds to start asking questions, and questions of our public officials who are supposed to be our servants, who represent us in some capacity, yet we don't get the answers to that. We don't get any investigations looking into it. And it's very concerning, because if there's nothing to hide, this could all go away very quickly. The public could have confidence in our election system, but the fact that we don't see it, and I guess to put a cap on that, for my, I'm more of a techie, analytical kind of person, but I see what looks like a sim election. If I was going to be on a computer and I'm playing Sim City and I tell it to make me a city, it's just going to follow some pattern, some algorithm, and it'll pop out a city. Okay. But a real city that's developed by builders and people who move, it's going to have some more randomness to it, right? Even if
Yes.
you zone the city, it's still going to have deviations from your patterns.
Yes.
So why do our elections look like they are somewhat simulated?
You know, that is an incredible analysis. I like that. I really do. In fact, I'm going to write that down. But I do want to that kind of moves me to thinking about the legislation. The last time we were here, you were waiting for an audit that Senator Dom was requesting. And you discussed about the need for Title 26 to have maybe some, revisions to it, maybe eliminate
Absolutely.
a lot of it, how it's big, it's bulky, I don't know, it's huge. I can't even get through it all. So I want to ask you about that. Do you have any updates on any of the legislation that you have asked for with this past session? And if I know that a lot of it didn't pass, but do you have any insight on why this legislation is not being passed?
Well, as far as the legislation goes,
Mm-hmm.
most of the bills that would have done anything to help with the issues that we've brought up here were not allowed out of committee. The committee voted them down, so they were basically dead for the session. I do know that there are some legislators that want to bring some of the bills, including, I believe, a forensic audit of elections up next session. So
Good.
we're looking at that to see if that gets done.
Uh-huh.
We recommend that people and citizens in Oklahoma contact their legislators if they are concerned. It can't just be us. It can't just be the same groups all the time. There are a few people that they know that show up at the Capitol all the time talking about this. And then it helps if we have citizens around the state that will do the same thing and call their legislator, find out who they are, your representative or your senator, and ask them about this subject, and see where they are on this subject, and if they would look into it as well, and look into some of the legislation that was killed last session and see if they would be willing to bring it back up and submit it for this next session in 2023.
Gotcha.
That would be very helpful.
So let me ask you this. We were talking about the cast voter records, and we were talking about, you're not allowed to ask questions. There's lack of transparency going on here. That kind of brings me to thinking of the electronic voting. So I know that that is a hot topic. We still have the iHeart electronic voting machines. Now we've got ERIC, which is the Electronic Registration Information Center, or the database that has not been enacted or put in place but has been funded. So, can you just briefly touch on what you're seeing as far as what I would consider, and I'm not trying to be rude, but censorship of election integrity?
Well, we did put out a call for every county for cast vote records, the CVR records, what's referred to as CVR records. And we started receiving partial request, fulfillment, where they would give us a certain amount of data, but they had to ask about the rest. And then all of a sudden, around September 18th or so, we started seeing a change in the letters and the sharing of information. And each county was sending us what looked like a form letter, with, stating that the state election board had got back to them, or because the cybersecurity team had gotten with them, and they believed that giving us this data, the cast vote record, somehow might compromise the machines, and if they were to give us the information as citizens, that somehow that would impinge on the security of the election somehow, and the security of the machines, that somehow use this data to compromise the elections. But my whole answer to that is, if that is the answer, why do we have elections that run that risk? Why do we have elections that are potentially a national security risk or a state security risk? Why are we using machines that could possibly be compromised in our elections at all?
Yeah.
And are these elections then constitutional in Oklahoma or in the United States?
Wow. That is an excellent question. I want to ask you this before we go on to the break. Has anybody broached those questions? Have you been able to ask those questions of anybody? Have you been able to go to the election board meetings or the ethics committee? Well, probably not the ethics committee, but election board meetings. And have you been able to ask those questions of anybody? I know we got to take a quick break. We're going to get back to it. Cliffhanger. Don't go away.
My city get crazy like Babylon. I can't be the good.
Welcome back to the Conservative Continuum. I am your host, Mick Meow. We are here with Wendy Dial and Ryan Hill, and we are talking about election integrity and election reform. And we were on a cliffhanger. Is everybody holding on? So you were talking about, all of these questions that you had. Are you able to bring them to the election board? Can you bring them to the legislator? Has anybody asked you about this?
Well, when we do bring it up, because nobody asks us about this, we bring the question to officials and legislators, and we get the same answer, and that is silence. There's no answer. There is no answer.
Wow.
I even made a phone call just in this past week, and I had to get called back, so it may have been over the weekend, but trying to find out, just recently in the last few weeks, some information has broke about a company called Connect. And you may have heard of them. I don't know all the ins and outs, but it has to do with election software, poll workers. It's been discovered that information about U.S. poll workers has been stored on servers in China that are through this company. The CEO of the company has been arrested. So I called, and some of us have started calling our counties to find out, do we use any of this software? It's called Poll Chief. It's a very simple question. So I called into Oklahoma County's election board, and I got a voicemail, but they did call me back, and they did not answer the question. They referred me to the state election board and said they handle all of that. And I said, well, can you just tell me real quick, whether or not we use this Connect software? No answer. Got to talk to the state election board. So I haven't done that yet. But we may or may not. But you'd think it would be pretty easy to get a up or down answer to something like that.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that it would take, 16 phone calls and, a drop of DNA blood.
Right.
Let me ask you this. The ERIC system, the Electronic Registration Information Center, it's here, it's in Oklahoma. It hasn't been put in place yet. There is a group, Ladies for Liberty, who has a petition out there. You can find it on ipetitions.com. Look up Ladies for Liberty. Don't let them steal our votes. And they are trying to see if we can get that defunded. Can you just briefly talk to us a little bit about ERIC and that impact for us in Oklahoma?
Okay, well, ERIC is where essentially the state agrees to sign on with what is a private corporation, and states join into this corporation. They'll send one representative, and right now there are 30 representatives for the state of Oklahoma, the nation involved with ERIC. Oklahoma just signed on, so we would be the 31st state, but there are already people who are in states that are pulling out of ERIC, okay, because they're finding out their voter rolls. They promised to clean their voter rolls, and they're not seeing that. But part of the contract with ERIC is that you send your state's motor vehicle registrations to ERIC along with your voter registrations. And what they do is they compare the two.
Uh-huh.
And if they find someone that has a driver's license, but they're not registered to vote and they are of age, the state agrees to contact that person as part of their contract. They agree to contact that person and inform them that they are eligible to vote in the state of Oklahoma.
Oh.
So, who has a driver's license, for instance, in Oklahoma would be very important then. And I do know that we did have some legislation in the 2022 session where, for some reason, lawmakers were trying to push driver's licenses for people that may not even be in the country legally.
Yes.
So that was a little concerning because what would happen with that? Is there a way to make sure that those names then would not get a notification from the state saying you're now entitled to vote in Oklahoma? How would they know
Yes.
the difference between a citizen and a non-citizen in that way? So we do have those concerns about ERIC, and I do know that like I said, I believe it's Louisiana and another state are dropping out of ERIC.
Yes.
And we are working to try to get the state of Oklahoma out. We asked some legislators if they could rescind those bills, and that didn't happen this session. But the Ladies for Liberty have this petition going around that they want people to sign, and we
Yes.
suggest I've signed it to get out of the ERIC system, because having researched it, it takes our voter registration rolls out of the hands of Oklahomans and gives it to 30 people in a private corporation to determine what happens to our voter rolls, and completely takes it out of the hands of the Oklahoma voters.
Oh, Lord of mercy. Okay, I want to real quickly move on to this. And don't forget to go and sign that petition. I signed it too. So we'll make sure and put that on the website as well, or the show when we run it. There was a petition for declaratory judgment and emergency relief against electronic voting systems and destruction of records. It was filed with the Oklahoma Supreme Court in August. It was filed by a group of concerned citizens, and basically they were asking for an injunction against the electronic voting machines or systems. And so basically it was the preservation of records, ballots, and anything that could be required to be used for a forensic audit. Do you know anything about where that's at?
I can speak a little bit to it, Mick. I don't want to say too much because it's ongoing,
Okay.
but they're basically looking for what you said to stop this, because we're not seeing it done through the legislation. We're getting the cold shoulder from different offices and everything. So these are some citizens that are just from different areas of Oklahoma. They're not all in one neighborhood, that were also concerned, not part of any official group, that are now petitioning, and they are gathering enough information to show that this is not secure the way that we do elections. So hopefully that will get some traction. I don't know if there's an upcoming hearing date that's been set, but I would expect we will hear more out of that.
Okay, we'll be looking forward to that. We'll be following up, and I want to get to this last, because I know the kitty is getting ready to wake up. I can feel him. 3 counties, possibly 4 in Oklahoma: Craig County, McIntosh County, Osage County, and I think possibly Kay, have signed a resolution stating that they formally reject the certified results of the 2020 presidential election. So with all the evidence of 2,000 mules standing in the gap, election selection code, What I'm wondering is, I think all 77 counties should do it. I think that, I wonder if our state GOP committee body would all sign in the resolution. But I wanted to get your input, what you thought about it, because I did see it on your website as well.
Um, yes, I was a little heartened to see that the county GOP organizations are taking where maybe the state doesn't want to go yet. But these counties are looking at the issues across the country with the elections, not even the state of Oklahoma. And they understand that what the other states do and how they count their votes and problems with their elections impacts Oklahoma. So, what they've decided to do, looking at Pennsylvania, looking at Arizona, looking at Wisconsin, they have decided at the county level that they're just not going to recognize the certified results because they believe that there were things that were possibly less than lawful going on there. And that's what the resolution states. It doesn't say anything about Oklahoma's elections in this state. They are merely looking at what was happening across the country, and they are choosing to not, not go by the certified results of 2020. They don't recognize them. So we recommend that other counties look at the resolution and see if it's something that their GOP might want to consider. It's up to each county as to what they wish to do.
I think that's wonderful. We're going to post those as well so that you can take a look at them. The kitty is crying, but really quickly, I want to give you the Fairview email address. It's fairviewbaptistedmond.org, so you can go and watch that video of Captain Seth Keschel. You guys, the kitty is awake, and that signals the end of our interview. But I want to thank you both again for coming on.
So great.
See me. It is so good to see you guys. I can't wait to get the next update. You all stay with us until the end of the show. Don't go away.
My city get crazy like Babylon. I can't be the go.
Thank you for curling up with us today. I am so grateful that you watched my program, and I am truly blessed by all of you. Thank you to my special guests, Wendy Dial and Ryan Hill of Oklahoma Liberty and Integrity. I hope that you all are ready to get out and vote November 8th in person. On December 2nd and 3rd, the Conservative Continuum and Ecclesia will be hosting an Understanding the Threat training class. This is a way to empower citizens, elected officials, and police to come together and learn strategic operational training in order to organize our communities into operational forces, identifying the roots of corruption and dismantling the hostile networks of Marxism and communism in our communities, and then to reestablish a Republican form of government at the local level. Visit understandingthethreat.com in order to learn about the course and sign up. Please subscribe to me, the Conservative Continuum, on patreon.com/McMeow. You can also find the Conservative Continuum on Rumble and Facebook. McMeow is on True Social, Telegram, and Substack. I look forward to seeing you all next week when we will talk with Alex Gray. He was the National Security Council Chief of Staff in the Trump administration, and he will be discussing with us the existential threat of China and a creation of the Oklahoma-China Commission. So don't forget, stand up, speak out, get involved, and be blessed always, my friends.